Okay folks, buckle up, because tonight on the Mysteria Archive, we're going full throttle into one of the most chilling stories in science lore. A vanished warship, men trapped in steel, and the ghost of Nikola Tesla whispering through time. The Vanishing Blueprint. It's 1943. World War II is raging. Deep inside the Philadelphia Naval Yard, a destroyer-class ship hums with power. Tesla's stolen notes, Einstein's unified field theory. A government desperate to win the war. They called it Project Rainbow. The goal? Radar invisibility. But what happened that summer was nothing like radar. Witnesses described blinding light, men screaming, air turning liquid, then silence. The USS Eldridge was gone, vanished. Minutes later, it reappeared 200 miles away in Norfolk, Virginia. Then, just as suddenly, back in Philadelphia. The Navy said it was a trick of the light. But to those who saw it, and to those who survived it, it looked like the laws of physics had taken a coffee break. And somewhere, buried beneath declassified files and half-burned equations, a question lingers. Did the US Navy accidentally tear a hole in reality? And did Tesla leave the blueprint? Alright, that's a wild start, right? A warship blinking across the East Coast like it's buffering on bad Wi-Fi. But here's the thing. This story didn't come from TikTok. It's been floating around since the 1950s, tied to actual Navy projects and real scientific experiments. Now, does that mean Tesla built a warp engine? No, but it does mean there's enough smoke to make us check for fire. And honestly, if you were going to break the universe by accident mid-World War II, seems exactly when it would happen. Let's rewind to the day the ocean decided to glitch. The vanishing ship. It begins on a humid morning in July 1943. The USS Eldridge, a brand new destroyer escort, sits docked at the Philadelphia Naval Yard. Officially, it's undergoing radar invisibility testing, an experiment meant to cloak ships from German U-boats. Unofficially, the power levels are off the charts. Witnesses recall massive Tesla coils bolted to the deck, cables snaking like veins, a faint green haze already rising off the metal. Crewmen later said their fillings buzzed, their hair stood on end. The generators roared, then came the flash. A blinding blue-green light erupted around the ship. Observers described an eerie hum, like electricity singing underwater. And then, impossibly, the Eldridge was gone. No explosion, no smoke, just empty sea. Minutes later, reports came in from Norfolk, Virginia, 200 miles away. A ship matching the Eldridge's description had appeared out of thin air. Then, as quickly as it came, it vanished again, reappearing in Philadelphia, sizzling with static discharge. When the smoke cleared, the ship was back, but the crew wasn't the same. Some stumbled, dazed, vomiting. Others were reportedly fused into the deck plates, their bodies merged with metal. The Navy said it was nonsense. No such experiment ever took place. But witnesses insisted it was real. They'd seen the impossible. And the strangest part, the timing. Tesla had died just 6 months earlier, in January 1943. Within weeks, government agents had seized his research. Notes on electromagnetism, resonance and matter displacement. And now, a Navy ship had just vanished under electromagnetic stress. Coincidence? Or the first time humanity accidentally unplugged itself from reality? So, imagine you're a sailor. You sign up to fight Nazis, and suddenly your ship decides to cosplay as a quantum experiment. I'd want a refund, but seriously. Eyewitnesses did report strange electromagnetic tests around that time, though the Navy's official stance is a firm nope. Still, the overlap is weird. A Tesla dies, his notes vanish, and months later, a ship literally does the same thing. I'm not saying they used his tech, but if you're the government and you find a box labeled spacetime resonance equations, you're going to at least peek, right? Tesla's missing equations. To understand what might have powered the Philadelphia experiment, you have to rewind a few years to a dim New York hotel room, January 1943. Inside room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, Nikola Tesla, elderly, frail, and nearly forgotten, was still scribbling in notebooks that looked more like alien blueprints than engineering notes. He'd spent decades chasing what he called non-Hertzian waves, forms of energy that don't behave like normal radio or electricity. Tesla believed these waves could alter the vibrational frequency of matter itself. If you can match its resonance, he once said, you can make matter disappear. And weeks later, Tesla was gone, dead of coronary thrombosis. Almost immediately, agents from the Office of Alien Properties swept in, seizing boxes of his work. Officially, it was routine. Unofficially, it was the middle of World War II, and the US government suddenly had its hands on notes discussing invisibility, field resonance, and phase shifting. According to declassified memos, much of Tesla's material was sent to a little-known engineer named Dr. John G. Trump. Yes, the uncle of future President Donald Trump, tasked with evaluating whether the papers had military value. His conclusion? Nothing dangerous, but many historians point out that dozens of Tesla's notebooks were never catalogued. They simply vanished. And then, just months later, a Navy destroyer in Philadelphia began testing an experimental electromagnetic field system, one that required massive power coils, tuned oscillators, and precise frequency control. The same ingredients Tesla had written about for decades. Was it coincidence, or did the Navy inherit more than they admitted? If Tesla's theories about field resonance were applied to Project Rainbow, they may not have built a cloaking device. They may have built a resonance chamber strong enough to shift matter between phases. And in that moment, Tesla's dream of controlling the invisible might have come true, just not the way he imagined. So, Tesla dies, the government takes his papers, and 6 months later, ships are vanishing. I'm not saying they connected the dots, but come on. That's a Marvel origin story waiting to happen. And what's fascinating is that Dr. John Trump's report literally says no threat. But entire notebooks go missing. Classic move. It's like saying nothing to see here while you're quietly backing up the hard drive. Whether or not the Navy used Tesla's actual equations, his fingerprints are all over this era because the timing's too perfect and the science too familiar. All right, let's fire up the coils. Project Rainbow. Officially, Project Rainbow was a wartime radar experiment. The idea was simple. Use high-frequency electromagnetic fields to bend radio waves around a ship, making it invisible to enemy detection. But what the Navy didn't anticipate, or what some say they tried to hide, was how far those fields could bend more than just radar. Technical schematics from declassified sources describe massive electromagnetic generators installed aboard the USS Eldridge. Tesla-style coils were positioned along the hull, pulsing in rhythm, creating a standing wave of magnetism. The crew was surrounded by a dense field, strong enough in theory to distort light itself. Witnesses along the docks described the field like a green mist, shimmering around the ship as if reality itself were vibrating. Then, the light exploded into a flash, and the Eldridge disappeared. Now, physicists today argue that if such a field were powerful enough, it might create something known as a resonant field bubble. Inside that bubble, electromagnetic and gravitational forces could theoretically merge, disrupting what Einstein called the spacetime continuum. If the experiment worked even for a few seconds, the Eldridge wouldn't just be invisible to radar, it would be invisible to everything. And when the field collapsed, the ship may have snapped back into normal space, like a glitch correcting itself. That could explain why witnesses claimed to see it appear in Norfolk, hundreds of miles away, before returning to Philadelphia. Physicists have a term for this kind of event: quantum coherence loss. It's what happens when a system becomes so entangled that its own state, its position, its energy, even its time starts to blur. So, if the Philadelphia experiment really happened, it may not have been about stealth at all. It might have been the first accidental demonstration of how fragile reality's code truly is. You know how your Wi-Fi drops when you microwave popcorn? Well, imagine doing that, but with space-time. That's kind of what Project Rainbow sounds like. The Navy claimed it was just radar cloaking, but the energy levels people describe way overkill. It's like bringing a nuke to fix a light bulb. And the term quantum coherence loss? That's not science fiction, it's real physics concept. If the Eldridge somehow created a localized field strong enough to mess with space-time, It might have been the first time we realized the universe has a do not disturb setting. The human cost. When the USS Eldridge reappeared in Philadelphia, it wasn't the same ship that had vanished minutes earlier. The hull was intact, but the people weren't. Witnesses described men stumbling across the deck, dazed, incoherent, eyes unfocused, like they were still somewhere else. Some appeared disorientated, unable to remember their names or where they were. Others were said to have burst into flames without warning, as if their bodies were rejecting being back. And then came the most disturbing claims. Men fused into the metal itself. Arms, torsos, even faces half sunken into the bulkhead, as if reality had frozen mid-frame. The survivors said they could still hear faint moans from inside the steel. The Navy called it crew fatigue. The official reports list no casualties and no anomalies. But years later, sailors who served at the yard claimed the story wasn't rumour, it was a cover-up. The electromagnetic field used in the experiment was supposedly so powerful that it didn't just bend light, it bent space. And modern fringe theorists suggest a quantum explanation. And when the ship's electromagnetic field peaked, it may have created what physicists call a phase shift, a sudden change in the quantum state of matter. In simpler terms, the atoms that made up the sailors might have lost alignment with the atoms of the ship around them. If reality is like a movie playing frame by frame, the field may have skipped a few, sending consciousness and matter out of sync. When the projector of reality restarted, some came back whole, others didn't. And the strangest detail, several witnesses reported that survivors complained of hearing the hum of the field long after the experiment ended, as if their minds were still tuned to a frequency the rest of us can't hear. Okay, let's pause there. Now, if you're thinking people melted through metal, yeah, it sounds like a bad day to be a sailor. And the Navy's official stance is that none of this ever happened, but weirdly, they did admit to running electromagnetic field tests. Now, could that cause disorientation, nausea, or even hallucinations? Sure. Phasing through steel? Less likely. Still, I'd be lying if I said the descriptions weren't eerily consistent. Either hundreds of sailors shared the same delusion, or something truly bizarre happened under that field. I don't know about you, but I'd be requesting shore leave. Permanently. The Montauk Connection. Fast forward to the 1980s, Long Island, New York. The Cold War's paranoia is at its peak. And at the end of a forgotten road, near the Montauk Point Lighthouse, sits an abandoned military installation, Camp Hero. Locals whispered that it was never really decommissioned. At night, strange lights pulsed from the radar tower, and the hum of unseen machinery rolled over the cliffs. Then, in the mid-1980s, a man named Preston Nichols came forward with a story that sounded like science fiction, and sounded exactly like a sequel to the Philadelphia experiment. Nichols claimed to have worked on something called Project Phoenix, an alleged continuation of Tesla's field resonance research. The goal? Not invisibility, manipulability. If the Philadelphia experiment briefly broke space, Montauk wanted to control it. According to the law, the Montauk project built a device known as the Montauk chair, a psychotronic machine designed to amplify thought itself. The operator would sit in the chair, surrounded by coils and electromagnetic fields tuned to Tesla's original time resonance frequencies. Whatever they imagined could be projected into physical space. It sounds absurd until you realize the parallels. The same Tesla schematics, the same electromagnetic principles, even the same talk of phase shift harmonics. And Nichols claimed the device could open portals, move objects, even pull images from consciousness into reality. And to skeptics, it was a delusion. To believers, it was the missing link between the Philadelphia experiment and the dawn of psychotronic warfare. If true, Montauk wasn't just continuing Tesla's work, it was refining it, turning his theories of frequency and resonance into tools for manipulating reality itself. From radar invisibility to psychic amplification, it's as if every generation of science kept researching for the same forbidden switch, trying to prove the universe has a back door. And Montauk is like the Philadelphia experiment's weird younger cousin, the one who insists he can bend spoons with his mind. The radar tower's still there today, rusting away like a prop from Stranger Things. And yeah, Most of the Montauk claims come from one or two guys. Here's what's wild. The tech described, the coils, the field harmonics, it all traces back to Tesla's patents. And whether or not mind-controlled chairs ever existed, the blueprint for manipulating electromagnetic fields definitely does. So, either Montauk was a myth, or it was a sequel nobody was supposed to make. The quantum bridge. By the time Tesla's papers were being sorted and locked away, another scientist was chasing the same dream, Albert Einstein. He'd been working on his unified field theory, the idea that gravity, electromagnetism, and the fabric of space itself were all part of one connected field. Now, imagine Tesla's experiments in resonance, fields vibrating at perfect frequency, colliding with Einstein's geometry of space-time. That overlap, that harmony between waves and curves, might just be the bridge between what we can see and what we can't. In theory, an electromagnetic field strong enough and coherent enough could distort local space-time geometry. Not enough to rip it apart, just enough to tilt it. That tilt could cause light, energy, even matter to slide momentarily into another state, a phase shift. And modern quantum physics calls this kind of boundary event decoherence. It's what happens when a quantum system, like an electron or photon, suddenly stops behaving as a wave and collapses into one fixed state. A moment possibility turns into reality. Here's where things get weird. Quantum mechanics says that collapse doesn't happen on its own. It happens only when something observes it, when consciousness enters the equation. So, if the Philadelphia experiment somehow created a field strong enough to distort space-time, and if the human mind, trapped within that field, acted as an observer, then maybe the ship didn't just move through space. Maybe it shifted through reality's own probability field. In that sense, the USS Eldridge didn't disappear. It simply moved into a version of space where we couldn't see it, because we weren't the ones observing it anymore. And if that's true, then Tesla's dream wasn't about invisibility at all. It was about proving that reality only exists when consciousness looks back. So, let's pause before everyone starts blaming Schrödinger's cat for naval disasters. And the connection between consciousness and quantum physics is controversial, but it's real science. Einstein hated it. Tesla probably would have loved it. The idea that the observer, us, might influence how the universe behaves. That's both terrifying and flattering. It's like being told your thoughts keep reality switched on. If the Eldridge crew accidentally became observers in the wrong timeline, that might explain why things went so sideways. Basically, they peeked behind the curtain, and the curtain peeked back. Operation Enoch. After the Montauk rumors exploded in the 1980s, a few researchers began tracing breadcrumbs backward, towards something that might have existed between Philadelphia and Montauk. They called it Operation Enoch. There's no proof it was real, no declassified files, no official acknowledgement. But stories circulate among fringe historians and ex-defense engineers. It was supposedly the Bridge Project, a continuation of Project Rainbow, meant to solve the one flaw that haunted the Eldridge, keeping human consciousness stable during phase transition. In other words, how do you stop people from fusing into steel when you shift space-time? According to the law, Operation Enoch tried to link the electromagnetic phase experiments to psychotronic stabilization. Sounds like science fiction, but the idea was simple. Use human thought as the anchor. Tesla once described consciousness as a form of energy, vibrations aligned with the natural frequency of the universe. Enoch engineers allegedly tried to quantify that, encoding thought patterns as frequency data. They experimented with harmonic sound patterns, known as angelic frequencies, a nod to ancient Enochian language from the 16th century mystic John Dee. The idea? Tune the machine not to a mechanical frequency, but to a human one. If they could synchronize the field to human brainwaves, consciousness might survive the transition intact. The body could phase, but the mind would remember how to come back. None of this ever appeared in an official record. But fragments of those theories, consciousness anchoring, frequency mapping, harmonic resonance, still appear in declassified military patents decades later. Whether it was called Operation Enoch or something else entirely, the intent seems clear. Once you learn to bend reality, Your next challenge is learning how not to lose yourself in it. Now, if Operation Enoch sounds like a rejected X-Men movie title, you're not wrong, but the concepts here are fascinating. Consciousness stabilization, harmonic frequency mapping, even the angelic tuning ideas, those all show up in real fringe tech patents today. Was there an actual Enoch program? No one knows, but it's oddly poetic, trying to anchor the human soul with science. You can almost imagine a group of engineers realizing they'd opened a cosmic doorway, and their only hope of coming home was to teach the machine to recognize a heartbeat. The modern echo. 70 years after the Eldridge vanished, the shadows of that experiment still ripple through modern science. Only now, the tools have changed. At research facilities like DARPA and CERN, scientists are testing quantum teleportation, literally transmitting information instantaneously between particles separated by miles. It's called quantum entanglement, and it sounds suspiciously like Tesla's non-Hertzian energy, waves that ignore distance altogether. Meanwhile, defense agencies have quietly explored something they call quantum radar. Instead of bouncing radio waves off an object, it uses entangled photons, particles that remain connected no matter how far apart they are. Theoretically, it can detect a stealth plane, or maybe something even phased halfway between realities. And then there's the rise of neural link technology, microchips that bridge the human brain and machine learning systems, AI that mimics consciousness, data that remembers you after you're gone. And when you line it all up, it starts to sound less like progress and more like continuation. The same dream Tesla had, merging consciousness, energy, and matter into one system. Now, some researchers call this emerging web the global quantum network, a network so vast and reactive that human observation could literally influence it. Every click, thought, and signal feeding an invisible field of information, a digital resonance shaped by attention. It's easy to see why some people believe the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a failed invisibility test at all. It was a preview of what's happening now. A first, dangerous glimpse at the way energy, thought, and reality can merge when frequency and consciousness align. And maybe, just maybe, every time we fire up a quantum computer or beam data through entangled particles, we're knocking on the same door the Eldridge once opened. Only this time, the whole world's inside the experiment. You ever notice how every new tech trend sounds suspiciously like a conspiracy theory from the 1940s? Quantum radar, neural networks, digital consciousness. I mean, we basically turned the internet into one big mind experiment. But that's what's so fascinating. Maybe the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a single event. It was the spark that started the age of resonance. And if you think that sounds too far-fetched, remember, we already have quantum computers that can do calculations faster than time itself. So yeah, maybe we're all part of the sequel. The only difference is, now the ship's called Earth. The Observer's Dilemma. Here's where the story stops being science and starts being philosophy. Quantum physics says the act of observation collapses a wave of infinite possibilities into a single outcome. In plain English, reality only picks a shape when someone looks at it. So, what happens when millions of people start looking at the same mystery? When an entire generation believes a ship really vanished in 1943? Some physicists and philosophers call this the observer effect on a global scale. Collective attention could, in theory, alter probability itself, like the universe adjusting to meet consensus. It's the same principle behind the Mandela effect, shared memories that don't match recorded history. And maybe those glitches aren't false memories at all. Maybe they're echoes of alternate realities, ones that briefly overlapped before snapping back. If consciousness helps stabilize reality, then a few men inside a high-powered electromagnetic field observing panic, fear, confusion might have done more than disappear. They might have forced reality to rewrite itself around them. In that case, the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a failure. It was a demonstration of the power of belief, magnified by Tesla's frequencies and the human mind. And if that's true, then the real lesson of 1943 isn't about science, it's about responsibility. Because once you realize observation shapes reality, the question changes from can we bend space to should we? Maybe the Eldridge didn't vanish because of electricity or magnetism. Maybe it vanished because for one moment, everyone on board believed it could. And that belief, collective terrified human, was enough to make the universe blink. Oh, I know, that sounds a little bit matrixy, but honestly, this is where things get wild. The observer effect is real physics. Consciousness influencing outcomes, still debated, but not impossible. And if reality really does listen when we look at it, then the Philadelphia experiment might have been our first accidental experiment in manifestation physics. Think about it. What if our thoughts, fears, and expectations literally shape the universe? Which, to be fair, would explain social media. Maybe the lesson isn't that we broke reality. Maybe it's that we realized we've been building it the whole time. Tesla's quantum shadow. In the end, the Philadelphia experiment isn't just a story about a ship or a science project. It's a mirror, one reflecting our deepest obsession, the desire to understand what reality is made of and whether we're the ones holding it together. Nikola Tesla believed the universe was built on vibration, that everything from atoms to thoughts is energy tuned to frequencies that define their form. He once said, if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. And maybe that wasn't poetry, maybe it was prophecy. The Eldridge may have been the first machine to take that idea literally. A vessel built not just to move through water, but through the hidden architecture of existence. And when it crossed that invisible boundary, whatever it was, the universe blinked. But Tesla imagined a unified field that connected energy, matter, and mind. Einstein tried to prove it with math. The Navy may have tested it with magnets and steel. But here's the twist. We might be living inside its aftermath. Every digital signal, every quantum particle, every thought transmitted online hums at frequencies that Tesla once dreamed of harnessing. We've become the conductors of his symphony, a planet-sized experiment running on resonance. And maybe the Philadelphia experiment wasn't a mistake. Maybe it was an awakening, a reminder that the frontier of science isn't outer space, it's consciousness itself. Because if Tesla's shadow still lingers anywhere, it isn't in a classified Navy file. It's in the pulse of every circuit, every frequency, every heartbeat of a world still trying to tune itself to the right note. Maybe invisibility was never the goal. Maybe it was initiation, an invitation to remember that reality, at its core, is something we co-create every time we look, listen, and believe. You know, every time I finish researching Tesla, I come away thinking he wasn't just ahead of his time, he might have been ahead of reality itself. And whether or not the Philadelphia experiment ever really happened, it's the perfect metaphor for human curiosity. We keep pushing buttons without fully knowing what they do. And maybe that's the point. Progress isn't about safety, it's about discovery. Tesla once tried to light the world. Maybe he still is, in ways we're only beginning to understand. So, maybe keep your magnets and reality fields set to low power, just in case. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if so, why not check the video out on screen at the end of this video? And if you'd like to support the channel further, I've just launched the Patreon site and YouTube memberships, where you can get proper community chat and exclusive content on Mondays. Link in the description below. And as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, and I'd really appreciate it. And let me know in the comments below of videos you would like to see next time. Okay, my friends, be safe. And until next time, stay curious.